Hi, this is Nancy Ralsamo with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. We are continuing our series called The Great Lakes Voyage. FYI, sometimes I call it Great Lakes Journey, so now you know that I was wrong. We know now that it is the Great Lakes Voyage. And we also call this one Learning to Quilt too, because this quilt has some more advanced steps and processes than the original Learning to Quilt. So if you are a brand new quilter, you might want to stop this video now and go back and watch The Great Basics. In the Great Basics book, I take you through all of the basic steps of quilting, from folding and hanging your fabric, 1/4-inch seam allowance, all of the really important things that you need to know. And then you could go on to the Learning to Quilt. Learning to Quilt is going to be a little bit more advanced than the Great Basics, and then Learning to Quilt 2, or Great Lakes Voyage, is the quilt we're working on now with processes that are going to be a little bit more advanced. The book for all of those quilts is on our website, onpoint-tv.com. So we've taken you through the steps on making the mariner's compass and reverse applique, and in our last session we did this blanket stitch border. This time we are going to work on the 1/4 square triangles that are going to make the border in this particular quilt. This is also just a really good process to know for all of your quilt making. You will run into a 1/4 square triangle in a lot of different blocks. So for the quilt that we're working on, we're going to be working with 3 colors. Now these are the colors that I've chosen, and as we were getting ready to film this, keep in mind I had done all this designing on electric quilt, even plugging in the fabrics, and I thought I was very happy with my design until I got this border done. And this border goes right next to my blanket stitch applique border. Now I'm not so happy with the colors. I am not happy with this fabric and this fabric right next to each other. So I am going to take you through on how I made this one, but I'm going to, in the final project, you will see that these will be switched around. I think I might put the green on both sides and then the purple here. I don't know. I'll figure it out sooner or later. So we're going to start with 3 colors but 4 fabric squares. Now this particular one, they start with a 4.5-inch square. So I've got 2 of my brown that has this really cool gold in it, 1 green and 1 purple. And I'm going to stack them right sides together. Now before I cut these fabrics, I did spray size them. Most often, if I am making a pieced block, I am going to spray size the pieces first and make that fabric be a little bit stiffer. I guarantee you, you will be happier with your results if you do that. So I've now got these right sides together, and I'm going to go to my machine. Now at my machine, oftentimes I will use my guidelines for quilting. There they are. My guidelines for quilting seam guide, and I will put it right to the right hand edge of my foot and then move my needle over. But I get a lot of comments from viewers that say my needle won't move on my machine. What am I to do? So here is another option. This is called the diagonal seam tape. With this tape, you get an entire roll of it, and it's kind of like a low-tack masking tape, and it has a center line, and then the 2 outside lines are a 1/4-inch seam. So that's what I've got on my machine now. So from the needle comes the red line, and then the 1/4-inch on either side. By using this tape on the machine, I do not have to draw a center line, nor do I have to draw the 2 1/4-inch lines on either side. What I'm going to do is, do you see the point of this square? I'm going to line that up with the black 1/4-inch line of the diagonal seam tape and start sewing. Just as I get my needle into the fabric, now you can't see it with the camera location, I don't know, but you're going to be able to see it in a minute, where that point will actually line up with the 1/4-inch line on the other side of the square. So as I'm sewing, I am not looking at the needle. I am looking down here. I am watching that diagonal go on that 1/4-inch line. When I get to the end, I'm going to pick up my next piece. With this, I'm going to sew it on the opposite side, the opposite 1/4 inch line, starting it there. After I get it started, I want to line up the other end of the square on that 1/4 inch line. And again, I am not looking at my needle. I am watching that corner of the square. As I get to the end of this, grab my scissors, spin that around, and I'm going to cut this one off and my leader. This time I sewed with my point on the left side of the diagonal seam. Now I'm going to flip it around, so I'm going to sew on the right hand side. Now here is my one line of stitching on the 1/4 inch from my center. Now by putting the center on the right hand side and flipping this piece over, I'm sewing on the other side of the center seam. Grab your piece from the back, flip it around. So I'm back to sewing on the left hand side, but now it's on the other side of the center line. So this is just one way to make half square or 1/4 square triangles that line. You can draw your lines. There are a couple of other products out there, but for this, I think this just works great. So now I have a seam line sewn. Let's see, which one can you see it best? You see it there? Nope, I guess I have really a good thread that's showing invisible. There we go. So this seam line is a 1/4 inch to the right of center and a 1/4 inch to the left of center. Now going back to my ironing board, I'm going to cut these apart. So before I cut them, cut it right down the middle, I like to press it. I like to set that seam and flatten everything back out again. Now I can cut it right down the middle. So with this style of 1/4 square triangle, your pressing solution is really important. And there'll be another little trick at the very end I'll show you with this too. So with this, I want to press all of my seams toward the same fabric. So that fabric that I had 2 squares of, that's what I'm going to press the seam toward. So there's one of them. And out of each one, I get 2 half square triangles. Flipping that up, pressing that, and I like to give it a little burst of steam as I come right over on top of it. Then here is the second color, but I am going to press it toward the same fabric on both of the colors. And one more. So I now have 4 half square triangles. I've got 2 that are the brown and the purple and 2 that are the brown and the green. Now I'm going to take one of each of those. And remember, these seams are both pressed toward the brown. It's really important that you remember that, because as I flip this over, the brown from the green is going to be on the top. The brown from the purple is going to be on the bottom. And these will butt right together. I can feel it with my fingers that seam is right together. And I'm going to put a pin there to make sure it stays that way. I'm going to do the same thing with this other one. Just really make sure that you get that seam snuggled right into the middle. Now we go back to our sewing machine. Now at the sewing machine, I'm going to do it the same way. Not sewing in the middle, not moving my needle. My needle is right there in the middle. I'm going to start by sewing on the right hand side of the center. As I come to the middle, here I can watch the bottom of that float all the way up on that 1/4 inch. And now this time I'm going to go to the left of center. Now keep in mind, the reason that something like this diagonal tape works so well with a process like this is because these squares have been cut larger than you need them. After I get these sewn together, I will show you how I'm going to trim these all down to the exact size. So let me sew on either side of these, then we'll come back together and I'll show you how to trim these. So I've got these sewn, and just like before, I'm going to press them before I cut them. Then we're going to do a little trick in the middle of it. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you might recall me talking about separating the seams. And that is going to give you a flat center in the middle of your quarter square triangle. So here is the theory. If you press it just to one way, this center seam is going to be really bulky. Okay. Right there, that's going to be 3, 6, 7 layers of fabric. But instead, you can do the seam separating. So with seam separating, you're going to find the last straight seam that you sewed, which is this one here. This is the seam I sewed. I'm going to not take anything out with that, but instead, I'm going to use my seam ripper to pluck out just these 2 stitches from this seam. As it came here, just past the last seam, I'm going to pluck those 2 out. And then the same thing on the other side. And when you do that, you can separate that seam or almost spin it right there in the middle. And that is going to give you a seam that only has 4 layers instead of 7 layers and 2 layers. It just makes the whole thing much, much flatter. So let's lay down that one. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other one, because when you are making quarter square triangles, you will be surprised to find that you're making 2 different sets at a time. So let me show you what I mean once I get this pressed. Give it some steam. All right. So if we look at these from the back side, I've got the purple in the same place, my green in the same place, but look at the seams. This one is rotating to my right. This one is rotating to my left, which means when it comes time to put these together, like I've done here, if you try to put these 2 together, so that would be with the purple and the green, like this, your seams are going in the same direction. That is not going to make for a very good intersection. But instead, you will take one from this set, one from this set, and you will find all of the ones that are spinning in the same direction, like here, and you'll be able to put those together. So this one is spinning going clockwise. This one is spinning going clockwise, which means those seams butt together perfectly right there in the middle. So that's just the little thing to always remember with your quarter square triangles and split quarter square triangles, that you get a kind of a mirror image on the back side. But with this, the next step is to trim this down to size. I mentioned that one of the reasons the diagonal tape works so well is because I'm not having to be super duper precise. I can be a little bit off and it'll be okay because I'm going to trim it down. So I want to show you 2 different ways and a couple of different tools you can use. So here it is on my mat, and the first way I'm going to show you is kind of what I would call the traditional way. So I'm just going to use my 9.5 inch square. Now keep in mind, when you are squaring up a square, you must do it with a square ruler. You must have that diagonal line that runs all the way down the middle. You want to line up your ruler with the 1, 1 in the top right hand corner. And then I'm going to recommend that you would take some glow tape. Glow tape is a low tack adhesive tape that comes in 3 different colors, and this pack will literally last you a lifetime. You could give one of the rolls away to your 2 best quilting buddies, keep 1 roll, and you still will have enough to last you a really long time. And on the back of it, I have placed that glow tape. Let me see if we can see it better here. There. I've placed the glow tape at the 3.5 inches, which is the size I'm going to trim this to. So I've placed the glow tape. There's my 3.5 inch line. I've placed the glow tape to be on the outside of the 3.5 inch line. Then laying down my block, I'm going to line up that diagonal line to be on the diagonal of the block. And then I also need to be sure that here at 3.5 inches and here at 3.5 inches, that is the opposite diagonal. So going from here to here. You also can look at the center point. So half of 3.5 inches would be 1.5, 1 3/4 inches. If I place that 1 3/4 inch dot on my ruler right in the very center, Then I can kind of spin it from left to right until I get this angle, checking out all of my angles. Can cut it on the two sides, spin my block around. Now I can measure it right into the 3.5 inch size. There. Looking at all my angles, my center point, I always look at everything as I'm going. But let me show you another way to do it. So here I have gotten a 3.5 inch square. So this is a little Omni Grid square, the exact size that I need my block to be. And on the back of it, I have put a product that's called Grip Not Slip. So this comes with 4 pieces of this grippy, oh, there it is, right there, little piece like that. And this is kind of like a sandpaper, an adhesive sandpaper for all intents and purposes. And I'm going to put that on my ruler, but I hope you can see it. On this side of the ruler, I have it to the right of the center line. On this side, I have it to the left. Well, that means I have to cut down this piece. To cut down this piece, do not use your good scissors. This would be a very bad idea. Do not use your rotary cutter. That also would be a very bad idea. You want to use that pair of scissors that you keep in the junk drawer upstairs that you let the whole rest of the family use because they're no good anyway. All right? You want to take and cut that in half and then in half again. All right? So I have these 2 smaller pieces cut, and I put those on the back side of my OmniGrid. So again, 1 piece to one side of the center line, the other piece to the other side of the center line. And that is going to make trimming this block a whole lot easier. So if I start with my block, now keep in mind, depending on which side your block is, now I'm going to have to switch this around. So my center line at this point, or my those no-slip guys, I've got them on the wrong side for this block. Well, remember, I already told you, you're going to be creating blocks that have opposite pressing solutions. So if I were trimming this one, this would be perfect because my no slip, that non-grip not slip tape is on the side that is on the low end of that seam. This seam is pressed to the brown. So if I put the grip no slip on the purple and then on the green on the other side, it is not going to move and it's not creating a ledge where the ruler will actually rock back and forth. So after I've cut all the ones that are this way, you want to remove the grip no slip. Now it doesn't take a lot, but you just want to get under there. Then you can peel that up. It's strong, but it's not not immovable. What's that word? There's a word I'm looking for. Permanent. There you go. Thank you, Gina. She is the master of my words. I'm going to grab this other side and stick it to the other side of that line. So when you're working on a project like this, there's like about 42 of these quarter square triangles you need to make. So for half of them, you'll have it one way and then for the other. So now I've got it on opposite sides. I'm going to place the center dot of 1 3/4 right in the middle. And then because that grip no slip is on either side, it's going to butt right to that seam. Now I can cut the right side, the top side, spin my mat, cut the right side and the top side, and then I have a perfect quarter square triangle. So just a couple of things, if you're going to use the big square, maybe consider the glow tape. If you're going to get the size square that you actually need, using this grip no slip and placing it on either side, I just think it worked out great. So take those 2 pieces, remembering that the pressing is different, so you'll have to split them up so that these are all to the left, these are all to the right. Then you can put them all together into your border. Then we'll be done with that part of this quilt. When we come back next time, we are going to be working on LeMoyne Stars with a set-in seam. No cheater LeMoyne Stars. We're going to be making the real thing. The book is available on our website, OnPoint-TV. It's called Learning to Quilt 2, otherwise known as the Great Lakes Voyage. If you have any questions, please email me at quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com and give us a thumbs up for the video. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.